tenure. And also last year, former Chicago Bears player Dave Durson shot himself in the chest, sort of like Junior Seau did. Junior Seau, I'm sorry. I keep saying Seau, but it's Seau. But not before requesting that his brain be donated to science so that researchers could study the long-term effects caused by concussion and other repeated brain injuries. I'm not saying or speculating that this is why Seau committed the suicide in the same manner as Dave Durson, but it just makes one think. Now, the former Pro Bowler, who was 43, was found by his girlfriend at his home once again on, as I mentioned earlier in the show, on Wednesday. Now, Seau's apparent suicide brings back to the forefront the issue with sports, brain-related injuries in sports, violent sports, such as boxing and football. Now, people always sit back and say that football is a contact sport, so you're going to get hurt, there are going to be injuries. No, my friend, like I stated several weeks ago on past shows, that basketball is a contact sport. Football, my friend, is a collision sport. Football is, once again, a collision sport, which the average career span of an NFL player is somewhere between 3.5 to 4 years. That may be going down somewhat now, but I think the last statistic I saw on that particular subject was 3.5 to 4 years. So the NFL, although it stands for National Football League, can also stand for not for long due to the nature of this collision sport. So let's bring things in perspective. I've been hearing a lot of criticism, a lot of, like I said, everything now is speculation. He committed suicide. That in the case of Seau. I've heard that, hey, maybe he was on steroids. It could have been roid rage or some type of, event like that. And they're speculating that even some of these players I named, same thing, roid rage. The injuries, and I always heard this term and didn't know what it meant until I researched it, is better known as CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Once again, CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, also known as boxer's dementia. And basically, one of the first reported changes of such long-term damage lies in behavior. Patients may display erratic behavior, become more emotional or emotionally irritable, even more violent. So just because you see a former player or a former boxer act irritable emotionally or become more violent, it's not necessarily always steroids involved. A lot of times it could be very well coming from brain injuries such as concussions. And that humbled me a lot because I was under the same impression. Oh, so-and-so's just having fits because of steroids. No, not necessarily. It could be because of CTE. And let's look in the case of a former NFL Atlanta Falcons safety last month in April, Ray Easterling. He committed suicide. He suffered from a lot of brain injuries, concussions in the NFL. And that's what we need to start calling it. Brain injury. I've seen guys all the time, oh, so-and-so has a mild concussion, he can play Sunday. Dude, do you realize that there's nothing mild about a concussion? Nothing mild about it. Let's quit trying to downplay it. There's a series of tests now, and I do appreciate what the NFL and college football has done over the past few years of taking this subject very seriously. There's a lot of tests to go through now before a player can go back out and perform after a mild, or is there, even if I don't believe in that term mild, there's nothing mild about a concussion. But just on Wednesday, of course, just the same day that this happened to Junior Seau, more than 100 former professional football players, two notably, one former Atlanta Falcon, both of these players were with the Atlanta Falcons, Jamal Anderson and Chris Dolman. Also, O.J. Santiago are adding their names to a growing list of players suing the NFL. They joined more than 1,500 other players who claimed that the NFL hid the dangers of concussions from them. So you may ask yourself, well, why has Roger Goodell taken this so seriously? That, my friend, is one of the, or I would say the primary reason why he has laid the law down on Bountygate, the team that is guilty of the bounty gate infractions that have went on the New Orleans Saints. That's why there's such a severity of the penalties that have been put on Sean Payton and other former coaches and players, current players that are being suspended. I'll be right back after a message from our sponsor. If you're looking for affordable health and insurance coverage, well then give Jonica Rowland of the Rowland Group a call. She's here to serve families, individuals, and small businesses. Contact her at 919-719-7211 or at 919-539-2492. Once again, contact Jonica Rowland of the Rowland Group. Now, before I went on break, I was discussing why Roger Goodell took Bounty Gate so seriously. One of the reasons, and probably the primary reason, is the growing list of players actually adding their names to the latest lawsuit filed last Thursday in U.S. District Court in Atlanta. Now, also stated that there's, in my book, nothing in my book agrees with what people call mild concussions. There's nothing mild about a concussion. He had, in my eyes, Roger Goodell had no choice. He dropped the hammer. First of all, he dropped the hammer on the most important men atop the New Orleans Saints organization. Head coach Sean Payton, general manager Mickey Loomis, former defensive coordinator Greg Williams, and assistant head coach Joe Vitt. He had to do the same thing to the leadership of the Saints defense, the player. Basically, you look at the penalties were to Anthony Hargrove, Will Smith. No, not that Will Smith, not Jada's Will, not the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. We're talking about another Will Smith, the defensive end for the New Orleans Saints. And former Saints linebacker Scott Fajita, now with Cleveland, and Hargrove, who's also with the Green Bay Packers. Now let's start with Jonathan Vilma. He's actually the middle linebacker and the defensive leader of the New Orleans Saints defense. He's out for the year. He will miss the whole upcoming 2012 season. I'm sure all of these players would appeal. Former Saint defensive end and current defensive end for Green Bay, Anthony Hargrove. He will be out for the first 8 games of the season, 2012 season. Saints defensive end Will Smith out for 4 games. Once again, not that Will Smith, not Jada's Will, but Will Smith out for 4 games. And former Saints linebacker Scott Fajita, once again now with Cleveland, out for 3. Now all these players will be suspended without pay. Now the only thing particularly surprising about these long-awaited suspensions is that Goodell did not issue more. I thought there would be more players than this penalized or suspended. But I guess he did what he felt was necessary. Goodell suspended only players who participated at different and more significant levels, according to the NFL's release. So basically, there was a method behind the penalties that he placed out to these players. Goodell really could have crippled the Saints. I mean, he could have went out there and said, hey, I'm getting rid of all these players for a year. I'm getting rid of these. I'm not just giving this a few game suspension. I'm going to give you the whole season like I did with Vilma. Now, of course, Vilma's not pleased with it. None of these players are. I mean, Jonathan Vilma, really, I didn't even see this coming. I thought that maybe half a season, but a whole season, which is amazing. Now, listen to the explanation from the league on what each of the 4 players did to earn the punishment. Vilma, let's start with Vilma since he got the most severe penalty the whole season. I know if he's married or have a girlfriend, they're probably throwing pots and pans, and like Sean Payton's wife, just throwing pots and pans everywhere in the house because that money's not coming in this season. Now, the investigation concluded that while a captain on the defensive unit, Vilma assisted Coach Williams, that's Greg Williams, in establishing and funding the program. Multiple independent sources also confirmed that Vilma offered a specific bounty, $10,000 in cash, to any player who knocked Arizona quarterback. Now, this was Kurt Warner. This was back when Warner was playing in the 2009 divisional playoff game. And later pledged the same amount to anyone that knocked Minnesota's quarterback Brett Favre out of the 2009 NFL, or rather NFC Championship game. Now I remember both of these games. I remember because I wanted New Orleans to lose. But I remember the hits, and there has to be some form of truth to it, because I've never in a playoff game or any game seen Kurt Warner, 2 quarterbacks back-to-back weeks by the same team. And Brett Favre sustained so many hard hits in a game. So there has to, in my eyes, a degree of truth to this. Although Vilma's denying it, but come on, man. Just come on. Now Smith, they got him for assistant Saints defensive coordinator Greg Williams in establishing and funding the program during a period in which he was captain and leader of the defensive unit. Hargrove actively participated in the program while a member of the Saints. Hargrove submitted a signed declaration to the league that established not only the existence of the program at the Saints, but also that he knew about and participated in it. The evidence showed that Hargrove told at least one player on another team that Vikings quarterback at the time, Brett Favre, was a target of a large bounty during an NFC Championship game in January of 2010. Hargrove also actively obstructed the league's 2010 investigation into the program by being untruthful to investigators. That Fajita, a linebacker, pledged a significant amount of money to the prohibited pay-for-performance bounty pool during the 2009 NFL playoffs when he played for the Saints. The pool to which he pledged paid large cash rewards to cart-offs and knockouts, plays during which an opposing player was injured. Now that, my friend, is dangerous ground. Like I stated earlier in the program, once you launch the hit, you can't control. Basically, if that player moves a certain way, you can't dictate or control the severity of the injury that you're trying to place on that particular player. So in my eyes, I think, like I said, they're going to all probably appeal, but the wording is probably, because the appeal has to go back to Commissioner Goodell, who issued the penalty. You know, it's just, to me, even though that's their right to appeal, I don't think it necessarily would do any good. Now, Commissioner Goodell did lay out a statement, or did make a statement, no bounty program can exist without active player participation. The evidence clearly showed that the players being held accountable today willingly and enthusiastically embrace the bounty program. Players put the vast majority of the money into this program, and they share responsibility. So basically, he got the leaders of this particular foolishness that I call it bounty gate. This was sort of, not surprising. I know that, that some players I know probably don't mind, launching out punishment or just giving out punishment to an opposing player, but to have a whole organization and coaches involved, it's very disheartening and very sickening to me to see true leaders in leadership positioning acting like little kids, acting childish, just for the sake of winning. Just for the sake of winning. My thoughts on it, of course, I stated earlier, I agree with the punishments. I thought there should have been more, but my hats go off to Roger Goodell for, people might say he has his reasons. I gave you the primary reason, but my hat's off to him because he made a decision. He stuck by the decisions. He stuck by the penalties, the suspensions that he laid out. And my hat's off to him. Now, unfortunately, my time is up, and I certainly hope that you enjoyed your early morning coffee with BabethomHerman. So please continue to tune in to the BabethomHerman Show on this fine radio station, Power WAUG, and online at power750.com. So continue to sip on and enjoy your early morning coffee, and have a great day.